have the majority of our committee here. I want to welcome everyone and say good afternoon. This is the December 1st. Welcome to December, by the way. Yes, we're in December. My birthday is next week. I just want to tell all of you that just because. All right, but we're in December. We're in a fresh, month, and we're able to do some really incredible things for our young people. And I'm excited to hear about the incredible things that we have been doing, the direction that we're planning on moving into as a district, and as a group of people that really believe in our young people. And I'm excited to be in these meetings often because I know that the majority of the folks that attend and that are doing work share that same value, making sure that our children are well. Because the quite honest truth, if our children are well, we're all well, right? And that's something that we've got to keep on the forefront of our minds as we're doing this work. So I want to say that today also happens to be World AIDS Day. We've lost so many to the AIDS pandemic and epidemic, um, just like we're losing folks to COVID-19. So the work that we're doing is extremely sensitive, it's extremely crucial, and it's important, the work that we do every day for our young people. So I want to start by that. Commissioner Roberts, do you have anything to open us up with, or are you good to go? Commissioner Roberts?
I'm sorry, Commissioner McFadden. I've had Xfinity at my house all day. My internet is just not on my side today. So I'm here. I can hear you all. So if you can't hear me, my apologies.
No worries. All right, no worries. Just wanted to check in to make sure that everything was all right for you. Christian, Executive Gant, because we have quite a bit of information on our agenda today to present, I'm going to ask if at the 5 minute mark at the end of each of the presentation times, at that 5 minute mark, if you could just give us that alarm, give us that signal that we have 5 minutes left for the presentations.
Okay, sure.
Perfect. And we're starting with the Fine Arts Update. I'm eager to hear about all of the work that's happening with fine arts as an artist, as an arts advocate, as an arts educator. So I believe that is Mrs. Williams, who is presenting for us today. You're still muted. And what I'm going to ask everyone to do also, for the sake of the presentation, that if you're not presenting, to just make sure that your camera is off during the presentation so we're not distracted and we can just see the presenter and the presentation. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner McFadden. And early happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you. Thank
you. My pleasure. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, you can go to presentation mode. It will make it a little larger.
Yep. Okay, cool. There we go. All right.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for the invitation to talk to you guys about some of the strides that we have been making in fine arts over the last few months. So I promise to do my best to do a thorough job, but I won't be not even 1 minute past thorough. And please, if you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to stop me. I might stammer a little bit because I'm nervous. These events make me nervous. But please, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them as we move forward. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the Baltimore Arts Education Coalition, the Baltimore Arts Education Initiative, and our Fine Arts Strategic Plan. And what's important to remember is that it's through the strategic plan got its beginning, if you will, from the Baltimore Arts Education Coalition, which was formed many years ago under Dr. Gregory Thornton, our past CEO of City Schools, who pulled together community members, educators, administrators to form a group that would think forward about how we might be able to implement the arts in a more progressive manner in city schools. So from the coalition, we were able to move into the Baltimore Arts Education Initiative. That initiative, we were able to develop the Fine Arts Strategic Plan, which is what I'll be talking to you about mostly today. It's an update according to the strategic plan, just let you know where we are and where we hope to continue to go. So we're going to review, we're going to do a strategic plan overview. I'm going to give you a status update to 2019 goals and present 2020 goals. And then we're going to do a little bit of review of the fine arts landscape that we have so far. What we could agree upon as a community was that every student should have access to arts experiences that connect students with their city, yearly sequential standards-based instruction, specialized pathways for study in a given art form, and experiences that connect arts learning to other subjects. And because these were all things that we could agree upon as a community, this is the very basis for our strategic plan. Our strategic plan supports a 4-year Baltimore Arts Education Initiative manager's position. That person is responsible for data collection. They manage the grant, the MECU Challenge Fund, assist with managing activities concerning the strategic arts plan, and we are in year 2 of that implementation. So I mentioned first the MECU Challenge Fund, and what that is it's a $200,000 grant in support of fine art supplies and materials over 4 years. Last year, we were able to actualize $30,000 spent on fine art supplies and materials, as well as equipment for schools. We are in the 2nd year of implementation of the MECU Challenge Fund as well. This year, the Challenge Fund is going to operate a little bit differently because we are putting a lot of funds into helping supply schools with instructional materials for visual art and some music as well. So it's not necessarily an either or, it's whatever the schools choose, and we are putting money towards that as well. We have a $100,000 National Endowment for the Arts grant, and that grant supports fine arts new teacher initiatives, which are inclusive of mentoring. And we did a reboot, which I'm very proud of. It's called Teach, Learn, Connect. We did a play on TLC for that. And what that is just we mentored intentionally teachers from years 1 through 3 in fine arts. With a gradual release kind of structure for that. So we do quite a bit of hovering in the first year of teaching. I assign them to either a mama bear or a papa bear, depending on who that person is. And we love on them. We provide them with information from, hey, have you gotten set up for your benefits all the way through? This is how you should be structuring your lessons. This year, of course, it looks very different because we are in a virtual space, yet we are trudging forward with that work. So the current fine arts landscape, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge all of the partnerships that we have that make fine arts what it is in Baltimore City, which is great and getting better every day. We have our partner. This is Lamar Williams, who is our staffing and recruitment partner in human capital. Julia DeBuslo is pictured here as well. She is the executive director of Arts Every Day, who is our backbone for Collective Impact, backbone organization through Collective Impact. Thank you very much to the board for this lovely young lady down here, bottom left. This is Jessica Chambers. You made it possible for me to have help do some of this heavy lifting that is the fine arts work in Baltimore City Public Schools. She is doing an amazing job. I very much appreciate all of the support and push for that position. So she is our new, and she definitely helps to support in all of our teacher initiatives. And then this picture, oh, I think she got cut off a little bit. This is Elizabeth Binskin. She is one of our partners at the Baltimore Museum of Art. And we're going to do some talking today about virtual field trips as well. So as I said, COVID definitely provided us with some challenges, but they are not challenges that we were not able to meet head on with the support of our partners. And so as we move forward, I want to make mention to the artwork that you're going to be seeing today. All of this is these are the products, not necessarily from COVID. That's a different presentation. This artwork that you are seeing is the results of the last iteration of curriculum that I brought to you guys as a board. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we pushed in terms of curriculum was student voice and agency and efficacy. We wanted to make sure that if kids did not have a voice in any other place, if they didn't have the opportunity in any other place to speak, that was definitely the foundation and the ground that we provided in fine arts. And I pushed really hard in the first couple of months of my tenure as fine arts coordinator to make sure that we had curricula that was going to do that. So what you'll see in these next few slides is the evidence of that. Students using their voice. This one I felt was definitely appropriate for this time as we have moved through a general election. And so this is this artwork. So all students in pre-K to 5, they'll have experiences in fine arts forms of dance, media arts, music, theater, visual art, and within grades 6 through 8, students may specialize in one or more of the fine arts forms of dance, media art, music, theater, and visual art. And all students from 9th through 12th grade will provide an instructional program that enables all students in grades 9 through 12 to meet graduation requirements and to select from among the fine arts elective courses in these art forms. So all of this, ladies and gentlemen and friends, this is COMAR. This is the law from which we were able to pull down, you guys know the story, through ESSA. We pulled it down through ESSA and put it in the Maryland Annotated Code. And so this is the guiding document that we used for budget guidance in the district. Budget guidance states that before schools can employ the services of any vendor, they must meet this guidance. And this is significant because before, the guidance was such that it didn't matter the size of the school, schools had to employ at least a 0.5 fine arts educator, certified fine arts educator for that building. Well, this particular guidance was groundbreaking in that it mirrors what our counterparts are doing across the state in terms of providing fine arts teachers according to ratio. Budget would not allow us to do according to a ratio for each art discipline. What it did allow us to do and has been allowing us to do is to make sure that we can staff according to the population of a school so that it makes sense. So it makes much more sense for a school from 1 to 200 students to have one full-time fine arts instructor. It could be in any discipline. One of the strategic plan's goals is that we would have 100% of our schools staffed with visual arts and music teachers. So we would recommend that a school would staff for either for either visual art or music, but schools could use their discretion for that. And then you guys could see how that breaks down to 1,201 students and above. The goal would be striving to have 4 full-time fine arts teachers in that building. And here's where we are in staffing. So we are definitely making strides toward completing that goal for 2020, which is to be 100% fully staffed across the district in visual arts and music teachers. And so here's where we are. So these are the highlights from the 1920. We had 106 visual art filled positions. Moving into 2021, we have 20 visual art vacancies filled. Four dance filled positions in 1920. And we had 3 dance vacancies filled in 2021. 9 drama filled positions, 1 in 2021. 75 music filled positions in 1920. 13.5 music vacancies filled. 194 total positions filled in 1920. And then 37.5 position total vacancies filled. So here's what that means. We have, in terms of us reaching our goal for having 100% of our schools staffed, what we can say is that we have 103 schools, that's 63% of our schools overall that are staffed with visual art and music teachers. So if we continue on this trajectory, 2022, I don't know that we'll be 100% staffed, but we are on the right direction. We have 149 schools, which is 91% of our schools that are staffed with visual art teachers. We have 114 schools that are staffed with music teachers, that's 70%. In dance, 9 schools are staffed with dance teachers, that's 5%. And then in theater, 25 of our schools have theater teachers, that's 15%. So we are definitely on the right path in terms of having fine arts being instituted in a way in which I feel like all of us can be proud of in city schools. So this is a little bit of nuanced data. This is as of September 1st. We hired 24 visual art teachers, 2 dance teachers, 1 drama teacher, 15 music teachers, for a total of 42 new arts hires. Our current remaining vacancies, this is again as of September 1st, was 1 visual art, no dance, 2 drama, 2 music, and 5 remaining vacancies total. So this tells a very unique story in that through partnership with human capital, this is increasing the amount of communications that we have had as a district. We have been able to fill the vacancies that are created by our principals who have been doing amazing things to make sure that we are offering fine arts and that we are doing it in a way, again, that we can be proud of as a district. So here's what that looks like for a pictorial representation of where we are. (2019) into 2020, I do not have to recap the fact that it was a tremendous challenge for us the second half of the school year. But even amid all of those challenges, we still were able to do some amazing things in fine arts. What we were able to establish was that although difficult, fine arts instruction still could happen in a meaningful way in a virtual space. So one of the things that we set out to do last year was have Be More Me Fine Arts Week. And we were planning this grand event. It was going to be great. It was students going from this school to that school and seeing performances by our kids and then moving to partner organizations and seeing what partner organizations had. And we just couldn't do that. March 13th, the governor shut it all down and we were all home. So I pulled together a team of arts partners and I pulled together these amazing teachers that we have in Baltimore City Public Schools, and we made it happen. We had a virtual Fine Arts Week that absolutely celebrated all 5 arts disciplines, from visual art to media arts. It was a spectacular time. It was 1 week where each discipline had its own day to celebrate. We had synchronous classes that kids and parents could attend. We had art challenges. We had a visual art gallery that people could, in quotations, walk through. It was a great time that was had by all. That Friday night of that week, we even had a dance party with a DJ. So you had to see me dance on Zoom. It was definitely a spectacle, definitely a sight for everybody. We had an amazing time. And then we did a day that just celebrated. It just celebrated our kids. It celebrated us as a community. It was a really awesome time. Our very own Commissioner McFadden led the charge, so to speak, in terms of wishing us well for that week. Chief Davis did as well. So we are looking to do this again. We are still planning a Fine Arts Week for this school year. Again, don't know how it's going to look necessarily, whether or not this will be a hybrid event or a fully virtual event, but it will be an event nonetheless. More details to come, so please watch out for that in your emails. The plans that were, some of these plans were, we kind of had to backtable them due to, again, COVID, which was establishing an arts integration cohort. We were not able to do that last year, but this is the work that we are pushing towards this school year. Establishing certification requirements for media arts instructors in Baltimore City schools. So this is still a continuing conversation that we're having as we are reimagining what media arts could look like in Baltimore City, because as you all know, Baltimore City is unique. And so media arts, I believe, will be a unique structure within the district as well. We definitely continue the recruitment process with plans to start in October of 2019. This was definitely a success. I was able to share that data with you a few slides back to show you that this recruiting process that we started to liaise school year before last, I'm sorry. We started to liaise that process. We were able to see the benefits of that into this hiring phase. Implementing our professional development plan has been working. When I was with you last, we started talking about how the professional development would be in cycles of learning for our educators. And this year is, that is the same for us, excuse me. My battery is telling me to plug in. There we are. Those cycles, we are still in implementing those cycles of professional development this school year, talking about big ideas in music, and then also we're using design thinking as a way to help build narratives, and we're walking teachers through building narratives in their own process so that they'll be able to then walk students through that. And then we are definitely continuing to fine-tune arts curricula across the district. I have come to understand that curricula is never done. And if it's implemented and done well, we understand that it's always an iterative process to make sure that we are always looking back at the resources that we have for students, and that we're continuing to develop those to make sure that it's intentional teaching. So not necessarily to just make sure that it's intentional teaching for our students. Partnerships. Our virtual field trips are off and running. We have master classes and artist talks that we have been having in the fall. We've had them, and moving toward the spring, we'll be having more of them. These are some of our partner organizations that have been helping us to implement these virtual field trips: the Hippodrome, Maryland Opera, Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, Young Audiences, the Baltimore Museum of Art, and the Walters Art Gallery.
Ms. Williams, we have 5 minutes to go.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
From the Hippodrome Foundation, there are opportunities for dance and theater masterclasses. Food for Play is a production for third graders. Technical theater masterclass opportunities, masterclasses featuring artists from all of these presentations. The awesome thing about this is that we are where before brick and mortar was a limitation in terms of providing opportunities to scale. COVID presented us an awesome way of thinking about how we might be able to offer these opportunities virtually for a season. And I want to make sure I highlight for a season. These are also organizations that are that we have virtual field trips with. Again, these are virtual tours with docents, materials collaboration. The Baltimore Museum of Art and the Walters Art Museum were in partnership with Arts Every Day across the summer and provided arts activities and arts kits for students, which was an amazing opportunity for us to be able to access for our kids as well. So I'm going to drop this link and two others in the chat for you so you guys can see some of the performances that our students and some of the artwork that our students have been creating even since we have been home. It is not ideal to be in a virtual space, but I wanted to make sure that I highlighted to everyone that it's still happening. Visual arts is still happening, music is still happening, dance is still happening across all of our disciplines. We were able to establish a virtual learning arts portal in the spring that supported fine arts instruction. This portal is still up now. It looks even better. And again, I will drop that in the chat so that you will be able to see that as well. And it is updated about every 4 weeks. It is aligned to our arts curricula. So, and it's the thing that makes this one pretty unique is that these pages are also archived, so teachers can go back to pull any information and materials from past units that they might be able to need. Professional development and learning communities, I spoke to you about just a little earlier, and they are, again, up and running. We're doing an amazing job with that, I believe. At least the surveys from the teachers tell us that. These are very beneficial and enjoyable for our teachers. These are our schools with pathways in the arts. So here's what we did. We remained positive. We expected to find a silver lining and to solve a problem every day. Our educators rose to the occasion. Our students are rising to the occasion. Even virtually, our students continue to inspire and be inspired. Thank you so much for my time that I've been with you today. It went by so quickly. I hope that I did not bore you, that this was kind of exciting for you too. Thank you again for the opportunity, and I welcome any questions that you might have.
First, I want to say thank you, yes. But secondly, I want to just acknowledge the incredible artwork that you've embedded in this presentation from our young people, from our students. I think that we have, well, I know that we have here in Baltimore some of the most talented, and I put the before most, but some of the most talented young people on the planet, the most resilient, but the most innovative and intellectually sound. And I think that being able to see them demonstrate this level of art making that you've embedded on the very least, and I'm going to go through the link, I think is incredible. So I just wanted to say that. Commissioner Sykes, are you with us?
He was with us earlier. He might be having some internet issues, but I saw him logged in. I'll shoot him a text.
Great, Chanel. So I'm thinking for the recruitment piece, that's a good thing, right? To see the vacancies, the field, and we've done a good job, working with human capital to make sure that we have, quality folks in our classrooms, whether in person or virtually, to support our students artistically. I had a thought as you were going through that. I don't know what recruitment looked like, but being in the age of COVID now, I could see a promo video for Just Fine Arts happening. Not to add additional work onto your load, right? But I could see a promo video that could potentially be fished around. I know that several of our partners are on the call with us now to be disseminated to them for our philanthropic community, but also to some of our universities and the untraditional pathway, to the classroom, to kind of just spark interest, to let people know that, hey, this is what is happening here in city schools here in Baltimore, and come be a part of it. Come join us. It was just a thought that I had. Knowing that we have a student media team, we've got all of this, all of these wonderful resources, I think that could be an idea to consider.
And we're working, just to let you know, I don't want to let the whole cat out of the bag, but we do have some productions that we have been working on prior to COVID and pulling some of, so yes, sir, we are definitely on that with the addition of pulling some of the footage that we have since we've been home into that as well.
Awesome. Then I'm thinking about budget development, right? Because we talked about quite a bit of initiatives and things that are happening as far as fine arts are concerned. But I'm curious to know, as we are developing budgets, um, as we are, what resources are needed to sustain programming in a hybrid context? And if you don't have that immediately, I'd just like to know that information, and I think it would be helpful for the board to know that information also, as we're moving into this season of, you know, thinking about which resources are the most impactful for our young people in this moment.
Yep. So I'm going to partially answer that question if you'll let me give a partial answer, as we are still, I think, developing some of figuring out what those resources actually are. One of the things that we were able to do pretty immediately was to get our teachers, our music teachers, set up with smart music and soundtrack, which have been great in schools. Again, one of the challenges that we have in city schools is being able to provide resources like that to scale. We were able to offer it to a number of our schools, but we weren't able to necessarily do it to, like, let's say, for instance, soundtrack to all of our elementary and middle schools. We kind of had to make some decisions for which programs would be most useful in particular situations. So if you had an instrumental group, you may have just gotten smart music, but not necessarily soundtrack, if the bulk of the students that you had were instrumental students. So we did have to make some choices like that. In visual art, there are quite a few programs that we have been using, some of which teachers were using prior to COVID, which was definitely a help in pulling on those teachers and with their expertise in those particular areas was of a tremendous help for us. And that is a landscape that we are still taking a look at to figure out exactly how we might be able to do this. Because, Commissioner, one of the things that I've been pushing forward is that we won't be in the house forever, but I think that we'd be smart to be able to take a look at how we are offering instruction virtually, as I believe that this could be one of the answers to help with depth of study in fine arts areas where we've had challenges prior.
I appreciate that. And, you know, when I think about making sure with all of the initiatives and the programs and things that you discussed with us today, it's great to be able to offer our young people the experience, yes, because Comar says that we should, but we also want to make sure that we are allotting the right resources that provide quality experiences for our young people because they deserve them. So I just wanted to, because we're in that particular season of thinking about allocating funds and budgeting, I just wanted to make sure that I brought that up. And then also, I'm thinking about Irwin and Comar and how the arts fit into that conversation. Can you just elaborate on that just a little bit? Because I know that there has been talk within the community and with our advocates about there being an issue with Kerwin and Comar. And I know that that will also impact the way we budget and money and resources. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are.
So, Commissioner, in a nutshell, we definitely need all of our advocates to beat the drum in terms of the Kerwin Commission. And I think that the last number that I heard was something to the tune of $342 million that was owed to Baltimore City Schools, according to the state's own funding formula. So as much as we can get the state to release funds that either are specifically earmarked for fine arts, or they are released to districts so that districts can earmark them for fine arts, it would definitely help. Because, as I said, offering opportunities to scale is always the Achilles issue that we have in Baltimore City. So we can come up with really great ideas and partnerships that can help us further those ideas, but without the financial support that we need to make sure that we are offering these opportunities to scale, that's always going to be a challenge for us.
I appreciate that. And to all of us that are here, I think it's important for us to think through that. The advocacy that we're going to have to undergo as it relates to Kerwin and making sure that it moves forward for the sake of our kids. Our kids didn't cause COVID, right? And we've been underserved for generations here in the city, so we've got to figure that out and put pressure on our legislators to do that. And then finally, before I welcome another one of our commissioners who has joined us this afternoon, I'm curious to know what guidance and support do schools receive for scheduling arts courses for the secondary level? What does that process look like? Because I know that you discussed the slides that give guidance for enrollment in numbers for population, but what support and resources and guidance are schools provided in making sure that as many of the students that are in that school are afforded the arts opportunities at those particular schools? Because, and I'm saying it because sometimes other things will be prioritized and not necessarily the arts in the same way. And I just wanted to know how schools, the guidance that they're receiving and the support that they're receiving in making sure that our students are actually getting a well-rounded and robust educational experience.
Yes, sir. So right now, the guidance that schools have for fine arts instruction just says that, one, they are to have the opportunity to explore the arts. The second portion of that is that those periods should be the same number of minutes as any other core subject. And so that's pretty much all that we have to offer right now. But we are definitely looking for ways to be able to expand that, to make sure that our students not only have, so like it's different to say that we can offer them the opportunity to do that and then access. So that is a part of my current work, to make sure that we are clearing up the ambiguity in terms of those two things, because access and then opportunity to explore, they're two different things. So we're trying to make sure that we are clearing that up for our kids. So this is a work that is yet happening.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Dr. Brooks has joined us. Commissioner Brooks has joined us, and I want to make sure that I give space if he has any questions or comments to offer those before we move on. Dr. Brooks.
Yes.
I was talking about Commissioner Brooks. Dr. Deborah Brooks just chimed in. But Dr. Darrell Brooks, I thought was on the call, and I just wanted to make sure that he had an opportunity, but we can come back to it. Yes, Janice, please go ahead. And before you do, Christian, do we have anyone signed up for public comment today?
No, we don't.
Thank you. Go ahead, Janice.
Thanks, yep. Commissioner McFadden. Janice Lane, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning in City Schools. I just wanted to make sure that we do one really important thing that I think Chanel jumped right in and got to the work. Another important update in the arts work is we were able to hire a director. We have a director of social studies, fine arts, and world and classical languages, Kelly Gonzalez. Kelly is here with us, so I just wanted her to turn on her camera and wave, so you got a chance to meet her.
Can you see me?
Hello, yes, we can see you.
Good afternoon.
It's nice to put a name to a face to your name. It's good to
Thank you. You as well, Commissioner McFadden. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. I don't know if Commissioner Sykes or if Commissioner Roberts, if they have joined again. I know Commissioner Roberts is having some technical challenges today. But Commissioner Sykes, are you there? Okay, thank you, Ms. Williams. If you don't have anything else to share with us, I'm looking forward to more of the great work that's happening within the arts and with our partners. Um, and I'll be in touch with you soon about something that I'm thinking about as
Awesome.
far as partnerships are concerned.
Awesome. I appreciate the opportunity, Commissioner McFadden. Thank you, everyone. And again, if you guys don't mind, I'll drop a few links in the chat so that you can see the Fine Arts portal and also a few links to some of the performances that we also have that have been produced while our students have been at home. Thank you again. Kelly, I'm sorry. I was on the roll.
Thank you for that. We are now ready for our staff development strategy presentation. It looks like Mr. Stewart is with us. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I can't see you all, but can you all see the screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Stewart. I serve as the Executive Director of Talent and Organizational Development within Human Capital. I am joined this afternoon by my colleague, Monica Logan, who's the Director of Systems Learning and Development. Monica and I will be walking through a couple of slides that outline our new staff development strategy that we've been working on for more than a year. And so I just want to start off by saying that the talent and organizational development team has spent more than about 13, 14 months now collaborating with the cabinet, staff, teachers, principals, district office staff to identify how best to realize the district's vision around staff development. And we're ready to share our ideas with you and get some thoughts and feedback from you as well. For the past 3 years, we've been engaging in new and different staff development, including the REACH Fellowship, leading from the secretary seat, which was geared at secretaries in schools, people and project management offerings for district office staff, and setting up new intensive learning sites through our blueprint work that is mainly led by our teaching and learning colleagues. Today is a preview of the work that we've been doing and what is ahead in terms of for this team in terms of staff development. And just wanted to note that we'll talk a little bit about what the long-term approach is here. So our work in building the capacity of staff is really inspired by Dr. Santales's vision for leadership. And the idea is that everybody can lead from their seat because everybody can serve. Everyone who works in the district office, all more than 10,000 of us, can lead from our seats and support student success. And so what you're about to hear from us are ways in which we plan to move and operate to build the capacity of staff to do just that. We were charged in Human Capital to reimagine the way the district plans for and supports staff development. And our goal is to evolve staff development into an effective living tool, a way of being, a culture that actively allows staff to actively utilize and strengthen their contributions to the district, to build on their skills, and to be more effective in their roles to ensure that we all are making a contribution to young people leading and thriving. This slide talks a bit about the department that I lead, Talent and Organizational Development. It was established within Human Capital, the Human Capital Office, to identify the key steps necessary to build staff development. I started in this role in February of 2018, and before then, the team had assembled and had been working around for about 5 years, but without any sort of direction or vision for the work. And so when I came in 2018, we hired Monica Logan, then who was the director for support staff leadership development, and began to field test all kinds of professional development for people within district office. That work has now grown and outpaced, and we've been working closely in partnership with a number of teams across the district to help us get smarter and to think about the ways in which staff development not only can be augmented, but can be scaled across the district. Those offices include the schools office, the academics office, the Chief Executive's office, namely in the Office of Equity. Our vision here is really simple. So what you see in those three circles sort of lined up in a vertical row are the three teams within talent and organizational development: educator pipelines and induction, systems learning and development, which is where we'll focus today, and the teacher career pathways work. The charge is simple, that each city schools leader, and by leader, I'm not talking about position or authority, I'm talking about every single staff member. Again, all of us are leading from our seats, so every staff member, every employee, regardless of role, will receive the professional development they need to contribute to student success. So more than a year ago, we didn't want to do this work in a vacuum. So we started planning very early in 2019 and began engaging a whole host of district office and some school staff to help build these plans, to help make clear how we could create a coherent and actionable framework that shifts our culture and fundamentally equips all staff members, regardless of role, to continue to make meaningful and measurable contributions to our young people's leading and thriving. So our task force was made up of a cross-functional team that represented unique vantage points within the district. You can see in the top left-hand corner, the initial launch team included the offices there. And at the bottom, the core task force team members are listed there as well, representing many offices around the district, working to create an actionable framework that we'll talk a bit about moving forward. The task force's charge, if you will, was to build a set of core competencies for all staff to lead from their seats. What does that mean? What does that look like? The task force was very clear that there needed to be key staff development experiences that each staff member should have, whether they're new or veteran, and that there needed to be an organizational structure and the human capacity, the people who would hold the accountability to lead a strategy of this size in the district. We look at other districts, we look at charter management organizations, and none have quite tackled a level or size school district that we have in terms of helping to implement a comprehensive and cohesive staff development plan. The task force met twice a month between October 2019 through June 2020 when we wrapped. And I'm going to tell you a bit about what we found in that work and where the work is headed and we're shifting in human capital. This slide anchors in our three major shifts in terms of the ways we need to start and then continue on to build the capacity of staff. What you see here are three major bodies of work that my team in human capital will be moving over the long term, but have already started to move starting in July when we did a slight reorganization, which we'll talk about. The first thing here is the task force helped us to identify and name 5 core competencies that every city schools employee, every city schools leader, staff member should be holding and being supported to hold. And so what we recognize is that there are specific core competencies that a teacher will need, that an educational associate might not, or that a principal might need, but a manager in district office may or may not. But what are the fundamental core competencies that every person who says that they work and serve on behalf of Baltimore City Public School students, what do they need to embody, what do they need to value, and what do they need to practice? And that task force helped us to name those 5 core competencies. The second major shift or body of work is reimagining the supervisor role to provide more coaching and capacity building of staff. We are not going to be a district with the size that we are that has a very, very large professional development arm that gives people a very small ratio of facilitator to staff person all the time. And so what we mean to do here is to enliven the role of every supervisor, whether it's a principal or a manager here in district office or a director or a chief or coordinator. If you are managing people, how can human capital, how can our teams work in a cohesive way to build the capacity of you, a supervisor, to coach and to build the capacity of your team, which then positions us to that third or yellow major shift, which is implementing the 70-20-10 framework, which is a time-tested, very research-based adult development principle that says that most learning should happen in job experiences. When we looked at and did a sort of survey over a 12-month period of how people were being developed, from teachers to principals to people in district office, the majority, more than 75% of those experiences were happening in what we call formal training, right? Where people are being taught something through a trainer or facilitator. Best practice says that that should only be about 10% of a person's development experience, not 70. But that 70% should be about job embedded experiences. And so if we're going to do that, we're going to have to fortify supervisors in using coaching techniques and in being able to build the capacity of their staff. So quickly, I'm going to walk you through the 5 core competencies, talk a bit about what we mean about reimagining the supervisor's role, and I'm going to give you a thumbnail about the 70-20-10 framework, and then I'm going to turn it over to Monica. These are the 5 core competencies that the task force vetted, dreamed up, and quite frankly, kicked the tires around. They spent a great deal of time gathering information on the skills most essential to contribute to a healthy climate and culture and to enable learning environments where students can thrive. What you'll see and notice about this graphic is that the 5 core competencies, or 4 of the core competencies, circle or revolve around being student-centered, that every person in Baltimore City Public Schools, again, if you are a para-educator, if you are a coordinator in district office, if you are a school psychologist, that we should be equipping you and you should be working to hold a student-centered mindset in everything that you do. That we need a staff that is racially conscious, that is data-driven and holding results at the forefront of their minds, that is embracing the notion of being a continual learner throughout the arc of their career, and recognizing that collaboration in a school district environment is key, that none of us alone can actually move a population level indicator or result. None of us alone can ensure that every young person in our district are reading on grade level, that it takes a Herculean effort, it takes all of us. And so we must learn how to work together and work together even more smartly. And so these are the 5 core competencies under which there are a number of skills and tools that we could talk about, but wanted to preview them here for you. Secondly, that second shift is about shifting the role of the supervisor. So the supervisor as a coach and a capacity builder. Development can only work when the supervisor plays an integral role in planning and facilitating. Development should not be a thing that we leave our desks or leave our schools or leave our classrooms to do and participate in. It is about who we are and how we take up our work. So we see the supervisor as a coach and a capacity builder. And what we will work to do is to intentionally throughout the year to expose staff to key exercises and skills and support and guidance that will help them to coach staff in ways that we have not done before. The systems learning and development team, which Monica will talk about, will spend some time helping supervisors build their muscles in planning, coaching, and capacity building of their staff and team. Most importantly, how to leverage their individual development plans and how to begin to implement this. Okay. That third lever is, again, around the 70-20-10 adult development frame, which was made popular by the Center for Creative Leadership out of North Carolina. Again, it's a research-based, time-tested sort of classic guideline for developing leaders and managers and staff. It emerged more than 30 years ago from research and explores how people grow and change over time in their careers. According to this model, there are 3 types of experiences that help people grow and learn, adults learn and grow, following a ratio of 70% around challenging experiences and assignments happening in the day-to-day work, 20% through developmental relationships, mentoring, coaching, networks, building communities, PLCs, and 10% through coursework and training, right? And so what we found was most of our development work was happening through that coursework and training, not sort of where people actually work day to day at their desks. And so that's why it's critical and important for us to leverage the role of the supervisor as a coach and capacity builder. The last thing I'll say before turning it over to Monica is that the underlying assumption here in the 70-20-10 adult development is that leadership and leading from one seat can be learned, that leaders aren't made, they're made and then they're not in fact sort of born, and that it's our role as a district, if we're going to fortify how we educate our young people, then that means we have to fortify how we develop our staff. And so we believe today more than ever that a staff person's ability and willingness to learn from their experience on their job is the foundation for not only leading with impact, leading teams, but also leading themselves. So I'm going to pause there and turn it over to Monica Logan, who's going to talk more about the human and financial resource shifts that we've made in human capital through the systems learning and development team to actually take some of this theory, take some of these frameworks and strategy and put them into practice over the long term.
And Ashley, really, Monica, before you start, just a note, we have 5 minutes to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. So what you see here in front of you is what represents the new org chart or the strategic shift that was made within human capital to focus our energy and efforts on this new journey. And so I serve as the director of system learning and development, and I have 4 staff members which report to me. And so we have 2 staff specialists, Robert Floyd and Aaron Shaw, whose work will be really about uplifting the training endeavors that Ashley spoke about. Sharonda Ely will be our organizational development associate, who'll focus on working with teams and coaching supervisors as well. And then Yumika Horsey will be our analyst, who'll be really in charge of monitoring our progress and development across the organization. So again, to reiterate some of Ashley's points, we're gonna start with really grounding people in what the 4 competencies are all about, helping normalize and integrate them across all development. So we'll help them understand why we've decided these are important for them to hold and what it looks like within each specific position. Also, as Ashley spoke about, we're going to talk about the importance or emphasize the role of supervisors as coaches. And an important part of that effort is being able to additionally catalog all development across the district to make it accessible and to measure its impact. And as we're building staff capacity, we're going to make sure that we are embedding in these opportunities for the 70 and 20 and 10 structure to really animate. We're going to be offering training to supervisors to figure out how that looks within their roles, within their seats. Again, we're going to be monitoring what this looks like by giving them these tools for the 70, 20, 10, and continuing to iterate and monitor the impact as we start to implement this robust model. And so we've started to chart out what this looks like moving forward. And so in this current school year, one of the first things we're going to do probably within the next 30 to 60 days is have focus groups to test and refine each element of this plan. We're going to be communicating the shifts that we're going to be making across the district to different departments, to schools. And then we're going to start to design and test supervisor trainings, many of which were anchored in development that we started last school year with the Management Center. As we move forward to the next year, we'll continue with core competencies trainings, with supervisor trainings, and continuing to build and monitor the systems for development. And in the 3rd year, we see ourselves continuing this deep and robust tracking of development in the district, refining our tools and approaches, and then really being able to document where we're seeing behavior shifts, practice changes, and benefits that will redound to students. And so we're going to start with, as I said, focus groups, and really through some great feedback we've collected in our conversations with the Teaching and Learning Committee, we realize we need to center the voice of students in this work, that they cannot be outside of how we decide this development plan is going to roll out. So we're going to be including the voice of students in the middle and high school grades. We're going to make sure that we have school-based educators as a part of that process, though that includes teachers, principals, and assistant principals. We're going to be talking to support staff, that include all the offices that we see there on the screen, from OAA to police to special assistants. And also we're going to be looking at the work of support staff, school-based staff that are those that make up the food service personnel, custodians, related staff, related service providers, educational associates, all those listed. Because we believe it's important to have the voice of those that will be taking up this development plan fully baked in and integrated into work that we're doing. So that actually is all that we have to present. Ashley, I'll kick it back over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Monica. If there are any questions or comments, we'd love to field them.
Well, first, I just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing in this culture work, as I would refer to it as. And certainly we need but before I go there, Ashley, if you don't mind, Mr. Stewart, if you could just elaborate a little bit more on the importance of this work. I know you touched on it. I know you mentioned Dr. Santelises' vision and the alignment to the blueprint. But why is this work critical and important for this city, for our school system?
Sure, absolutely. It's one of the things that I think I mention and say a lot in partnership with one of the offices we work most closely with, which is the Office of Equity, which is, we expect big shifts in our data, in how kids are performing, in how our schools are operating and school climates, and those systems, those entrenched things, they don't change unless or until people change, until we do. And so this work doesn't have a presupposition that there's anything wrong with us. It's just that we can expect our curriculum and instruction. We can't expect, these technical fixes to really wave a magic wand and all of a sudden then kids are learning and everything's wonderful. We have to interrogate exactly where we're showing up and where we aren't. And part of that, I think our equity office has started with a lot of their training and coaching and support. And what we aim to do is to come right behind that wave to help fortify and build capacity of staff to not only have the technical competence they need to do their jobs day in and day out, but also the adaptive and very complex human dynamic, human issues that get in our way. And quite frankly, that we have an opportunity to build our own muscle, to really return on the promise of what is in our equity policy. And I think that doesn't happen without us changing as a set of individuals, but to your point, us shifting our culture and being a place where continual learning, continual development is a practice. It's who we are, it's what we do.
I appreciate that. Are any of my colleagues on, my commissioner colleagues, are any of you on the call? Commissioner Sykes, Dr. Brooks, Commissioner Roberts. Go ahead, Dr. Brooks. Do you have anything to contribute or add to this discussion?
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. If you could just talk to me a little bit about some of the barriers for implementation. And so we know you talked a little bit about COVID-19 and both of the presentations, or at least the impact of it. But I would just love to hear about sort of implementation barriers and sort of any sort of workarounds that you've used to overcome them.
Right. Thank you for that question, Dr. Brooks. The way I like to frame some of the barriers are opportunities. So I'll tell you about some of our opportunities. I think that, the obvious thing in the room, the obvious thing in our society, our city, our state, our country right now is sort of the challenge of being able to roll things out and to slow things down because we can't do things face to face because, relationships really is a big it's a currency lever within the district. And so it has shifted the way in which how quickly we can move and how nimble we can be. That being said, I think for this team in particular, it's forced us to delve into figuring out ways to connect and communicate online in a district that's sort of spread out across the city anyway. So it really has been a challenge, but certainly been an opportunity. I think part of another opportunity has been when we sort of closed schools and shifted, this team had to stop focusing in on figuring out how to roll this out and had to figure out how to triage and put up a health and safety training. And had to figure out how to support people in opening of the SLCs, those kinds of things. So there's a little bit of competing priorities and commitments there as well. I think longer term, one of the things that's going to be interesting right now is a lot of our people, a lot of our staff members are fatigued around being surveyed, right? And here we're offering to do a set of focus groups with students and teachers and other folks. And so we have to be very delicate about that because we don't want to overburden, overtax people. People are, dealing with a whole lot right now. We also want to do it in a way that gets us great feedback so that if things need to shift or change as part of this framework, that we can hear directly from staff members. So that's sort of pushed our timeline back a bit and making us a bit more thoughtful about how we gauge and collect feedback. But it really has been a good opportunity in some ways for us to just slow down and think a bit more, in some ways clearly, about how we can not only engage staff in sort of sharpening the framework, but it also has given us more opportunities to partner with other offices who are doing development, teaching and learning, invite us into some things, work with the Office of Equity and some things as well. That gives us a chance to test in smaller pods that we weren't planning to from the beginning. Monica, any challenges you think from your end that you might add?
I think you really honestly covered it.
Dr. Brooks, are you okay?
Great, yes, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Stewart, Ms. Logan, for the presentation today. Mr. Stewart, when do you anticipate us receiving an update on this work?
I would imagine that we would probably do an annual update to this committee. You'll see some of it work its way into the blueprint update as we all sort of hang together around staff development. So you'll get bits and pieces there. But we will certainly talk more about this on an annual basis. You will also hear more of it in the principal pipeline development as well, because it's all within talent organizational development, so we'll all hang together. And I just want to thank you all for your time and thank you for the ability to be flexible. We sort of changed a few slides when we saw the final agenda and saw we had a shorter amount of time. So we wanted to honor that and not overwhelm you. So we recognize it's a little different order than you might have received in preparation. So thanks for your flexibility.
No worries, and I appreciate your flexibility also, but knowing that we've seen portions of this prior, so I'm glad to see it, in this fashion now. Commissioner Sykes has his hand up. What I am going to ask is that the next presentation be queued up on the screen, but Commissioner Sykes, Mr. Stewart has a question for you.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. I do apologize. I was having a few internet issues. I just wanted to take the time out of my day to say that Mr. Stewart, the work that you and your team is doing is like really amazing. I'm really excited to see the focus groups and see where it goes and how we can all just work together to build the district and move it forward to a better place. So I really just wanted to raise that, to say thank you for your work and your team's work. So.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Sykes. We will certainly be in touch as we work to connect with student groups and reach out to students to get some feedback on what they think their teachers and principals need to know and understand as we're building this out. So I appreciate your support.
Thank you, team. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Thank you to the team. And we look forward to the work, of course, but then also the update that we'll get annually. So thank you. So I'm not sure who's presenting now. Is it Chief Davis or some other member from them?
Yeah, Commissioner McFadden, I'll start it off.
Perfect.
Thank you, everyone. I wanted to just start framing a little bit of this because you're going to see a lot of data today, our BOY data, especially regarding ELA, literacy, math, in a few different ways. And it'll be very standard in the way that we've been thinking about this, and that when you get beginning of year data, kind of what's the reaction, what's some of the work that's been happening. And I would be remiss if I didn't frame this a little bit deeper for everyone, in the sense that before COVID hit in March, we were on track to really set up, I think it was around 10 different goals around student outcomes, specifically around the 4 main disciplines of math, ELA, social studies, and science, but also around the proficiency of our English language learners, 9th grade promotion, graduation rate, our early literacy, really the K through 2 work around early literacy and our students being able to read by the end of 3rd grade. But also things like algebra and advanced placement. And we were on track to really starting the year off with a set of goals that were really 5-year goals. We had worked in the winter and the spring to get to that place, and we're really just going to have our first school stat around it when COVID hit. The last 8 months or so have just been completely different. We all know that. But since then, right, we've just had to shift a lot. And I just think it's important for anyone that's watching this and for the commissioners to know that there was just a lot of planning ahead of time, that we were hoping that when we got to this point at BOI, we would be able to show a complete plan around each data point. So there is still a lot of work and a lot of very good work that will be shown around ELA and math. Don't get me wrong. It's just completely different 8 months later. And I just want to acknowledge that, because the best way for an organization to move forward is to have goals around these student outcomes and to work towards those goals and to shift as we see what our students and our teachers need. We just had to shift that thinking when COVID hit, because we literally had to go into trying to stand up 2 or 3 different types of systems. I just wanted to be honest about that before you actually look at the ELA and math data, because I think that's just an important point. And I also just want to acknowledge that the people that are presenting today had to make that shift as well. With that, I think I'm kicking it over to Janice.
Great, thanks. It's actually not me who's starting. I think we have Heather.
Yep, hi, I'm Heather Nolan. I'm with the Office of Achievement and Accountability, and I serve as the Director of Knowledge Management. So as Chief Davis was sharing, this presentation will walk you through what our diagnostic assessment results were at the beginning of this year, which gives us a framework or a starting place of how our students are entering at the start of the school year. We will also be giving an overview of the investments that we made in advance of this school year, in part as a result of COVID and in alignment with our education recovery plan around the content areas of ELA and math, and the status of where we are in implementing those investments as we think about the tools and resources and professional learning that we are offering to our teachers and our community. And then finally, we'll make connections to this strategy here with our MTSS strategy, our multi-tiered systems of support. So next slide, to dive right into our diagnostic assessment data, we want to first share just again a primer of what are diagnostics and which assessments we've invested in as a district. So consider a diagnostic as a form of pretest that helps tell a student's strengths and weakness, knowledge and skills before the actual delivery of instruction. So in the area of reading, we administered the Amplified DIBELS 8 diagnostic assessment in grade bands K through 5. In prior years, this was a diagnostic assessment that was delivered just to K2 students. We made a strategic investment in expanding that assessment to grades 3, 4, and 5 beginning in school year 2021. And the Amplified DIBELS 8 assessment really helps us measure what a student's foundational skills are. Those results tell us what students are mastered or struggling in so that we can support them in becoming better readers. The delivery this year was different from last year, obviously, as we started the school year all virtually. And so teachers delivered a one-on-one assessment to students during the synchronous or asynchronous instructional time of the school year, typically through video format via Zoom, and then entered the students' results on the assessment within the Amplify system. When we think about grades 6 to 8 and 9 through 11 in the area of reading, we issued the iReady assessment, which is an assessment that we have administered in this school year for the past several years. We also administered their math component of the diagnostic assessment in grades K through 11 this year. And what the iReady diagnostic really is, or how it's structured, is that it's an adaptive test. So it adjusts the questions based on how students respond. So if the student gets a series of answers correctly, it will give the student slightly harder questions. And if the student answers incorrectly for a series, it'll give them slightly easier ones. And these results really tell us which skills align to their grade level standards a student has mastered or is struggling with. Our delivery of this assessment, while in prior years, it is a computer-based assessment, so students would log in at school and complete that assessment during the school year. We had to transition that and really work with students and families so that they knew how to log the student in at home, and the student would complete the assessment while at home during the synchronous time so that the teacher could monitor and provide any kind of assistance to students if they were struggling in just accessing that technology. But it was an assessment that was delivered during the instructional day. Next slide. So some key takeaways from our beginning of year assessments, and we'll start first with grades K to 5 with our DIBELS 8. So what we found is that students' readiness for core reading instruction has declined from prior years across grades K through 2. And we'll see in this next data slide that it most significantly declined in grade K. When we looked at this data across national trends, we see that, you know, how Baltimore City is faring is very similar to how nationally other school districts that assess in the Amplify assessment are also faring. Digging into how our performance is among our student groups, we also noticed that among our Black and Latinx population, they seem to have experienced more of a learning loss than white students at the beginning of this year. We then took a look at really answering the question, well, how did students perform from last year, middle of year, and how are they performing now at the beginning of this year? And what we found was that roughly a third of those students dropped to below or well below, which signals the potential for specific targeted supports to get them really back on track by the middle of the year. But overall, what this data shows and what we were anticipating as we prepared for the start of the school year is the need for differentiated supports across all of our students due to the loss of instructional time since the spring disruption of COVID. So these next slides, I won't go too deep into these as I covered the key takeaways in the prior slide, but this just gives again that highlight where at least 25% of our students are at or above and ready for core instruction. And we see that this is a decline from prior years. So if we take a look at on the right-hand side, the gray and the blue bars, as an example, in school year 1920, at the beginning of the year, we had kindergarten, 43% of our students at or above, which means that they're ready for core instruction. At the beginning of this year, we see nearly a 20-point drop that shows that a quarter of our students in kindergarten are ready for that core instruction. And you see that gap minimized slightly in grade 1 and grade 2, but the greatest impact, as flagged earlier, was in our kindergarten grades. And as a reminder, this was our first year in administering this assessment in grades 3, 4, and 5, which is why you only see data for school year 2021 for those grades there. The next slide. So this is tracking again among those students at or above in 1920. What we found was that there was less of an instructional loss among, in particular, those students in grades 2 and 3, starting in school year 2021. So looking from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, 2,100 of our grade 1 students were at and above. 60% of those remained at or above when they entered into grade 2. Similarly, 63% of the students from last year in grade 2 remained at or above in grade 3. So some promising kind of sticking with those students at or above that we want to celebrate and highlight here as well. And then the next slide. So this next slide shows of our students that started or were at the well below category at the middle of year last year, what percent of those students remained well below at the beginning of this year. And so here we see about 24% of all first graders are remaining that tested at the middle of year last year as well as this year remained well below, and those percentages increase as the grades progress, with 32% of our students in grade 2 at well below and 39% of grade 3 at well below. Again, just this reminder and the need to focus on the targeted intervention for those students that continue to remain at well below. And then moving quickly here on the iReady diagnostic results among our grades 6 to 8 and 9 through 11. So here we saw with our iReady reading results that we had a higher proportion of students on grade level in grades 6 to 8 and 9 through 11. And so the reasons for that improvement are unclear and are open for interpretation. We do see differences existing across schools and classrooms, and part of that attribution we think is based on the testing environment, since the test was completed for students while at home. However, what we still find, though, is that among our race ethnicity groups, Black and Latinx students are twice as likely than white students to be at least 2+ grade levels. When we took a look at the performance of our students that tested in fall of 2019, as well as testing in fall of 2020, we found that students who were at grade level last year are more likely to have remained at grade level. There was some movement of students from that at grade level moving down to 1 or 2+ grade levels, and that really has significant impact around how they are able to access that grade level content. But what we do see is that district and national data show that the instructional loss due to COVID may not have been as impactful as we had anticipated, but that the persistence of performance from one year to the next has continued, especially among the at or above and the 2+ grade level students. And then the next slide here just covers this data here, where we see among our grades 6 to 8 on the left-hand side, we see a slight decrease in the percent of students 2+ below in both 6 to 8 and 9 through 11. And then on the right-hand side, that slight increase. So this is where we really focus on, given the change in the testing environment, we really focus on triangulating this data alongside other data that the teacher has about that student to really provide targeted supports for that student and ensure that they are able to access that grade level content. And then when we look again at that cohort movement, so this is factoring in students that tested at the beginning of last year and how they performed at the beginning of this year. In large part, those students that were on or above grade level last year remained on or above grade level this year. And then the next slide, again, showing for those students that were 2+ below last year, they remained 2+ below this year. So again, that need for targeted intervention, especially for those students, given the challenges that they faced this year and starting into and how they experienced challenges last year.
So good evening, everyone. Janice Lane again, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. I am going to try and get through the next couple of slides just quickly so you can hear about the work that the teams are doing. Basically, what's important here to remember is work we've been talking about far before COVID, is really that the research tells us that students actually progress further when they have high quality curriculum and tasks in front of them that are at their grade level. That research has been around us from TNTP's Opportunity Myth, from the work we've done with our curriculum partners, instruction partners, councils of great city schools, et cetera. So on the next slide, what you'll see is basically as COVID came to us, we wanted to make sure to continue to engage first and foremost with core grade level instruction. That we worked to identify the scope and sequences, the year-long gaps for students that we could identify through grade level content, and really started talking about just-in-time scaffold. So as students were engaging with their grade level, what could happen to scaffold instruction to support students as we're doing that work. We also recognized that there would be gaps that would be happening. If you can go back one just for a second, that there would be some gaps that are happening here. So we would be both identifying those gaps and working with our students to analyze the data and think about those gaps. And then finally, we talked to you last time we were together about digital learning platforms that are personalized learning, like Amplify Reading, super important for students to be on iReady, that allows students to work at a personalized pathway to recover, refresh, or extend learning depending upon where they are. And then finally, one of the reasons and ways that we informed the work, you'll see on the next slide, is really listening to the field, engaging stakeholders in various ways to build our recovery plan, and not just from the lens of North Avenue, but listening to surveys from teachers, from families. We had extensive work groups that included teachers, principals, families, included multiple representation across central office. We also had content-focused groups that the teams will talk to you about, where they were very specifically looking at ELA or looking at math or science, and also the opportunity to have content talks and office hours where teachers could come together and talk about what their struggles were, what their successes were, and what their needs were. So next, we're going to go into the curriculum area so you can see some of that work identified. And so,
hi, everyone. Thank you, Denise. I'm Brooke Horch. I'm the coordinator of literacy in teaching and learning. Our approach this year prioritized key skills and competencies, supports unfinished learning, and then we created this structure that builds on foundational skills and our traditional content-rich curriculum. Many of those components are consistent from last year, although there are a few new pieces, and those are noted by the yellow stars there on your screen. So thinking about what's new in elementary and middle school ELA, we have the inclusion of Haggerty in our foundational skills block, and that complements foundations really nicely. Both Haggerty and foundations have introduced extensive digital resources for this year. And then individual and personalized content is provided through Amplify Reading for our students in kindergarten through grade 5, and iReady for our middle school students. And we maintain Wit and Wisdom as our core curriculum with several updates, and we'd like to highlight a few of those new Wit and Wisdom features. So Wit and Wisdom in Sync presents the Wit and Wisdom curriculum with a lot of enhancements. In Sync has the same key features as the traditional Wit and Wisdom curriculum, including those digital components for students and teachers. And then the Learn Anywhere plans are flexible module sequences that include streamlined core text lists, and then they also prioritize content. InSync also provides daily instructional and vocabulary videos that are presented by an expert Great Minds teacher. And then one of the biggest additions this year is Affirm, which is the new online assessment platform for students and teachers. Also have lots of really great new things in high school English. We have enhanced nearly every single component of our instructional block. Our teacher-facing instructional guides includes prioritized content with explicit support for virtual instruction and recommendations for small group and fluency. Those are entirely new to high school. New curriculum-based assessments provide actionable data, and they mirror the MCAP structure and format. And then students also engage in Achieve 3000 as their personalized digital platform. And that content tailors to students' needs. It's grounded in content-rich nonfiction and differentiates and accelerates for individual students. So going back to what Janice said earlier, those personalized learning platforms that we have K-5, we've really been able to provide resources for that personalized instruction across the grades. And this investment in these research-based digital platforms provides students what they need just in time, and also complement the approach that we're taking with our core curriculum. The structure provides extensive resources and support for educators, students, and their families. We've made key investments in personalized learning so that all students have access to individualized content that they need. Right now, we're seeing a large number of students accessing resources on a regular basis, with over 35,000 students using Amplify Reading. We're seeing students reach success with 62% of middle schoolers passing large numbers of their iReady lessons, 75 to 100%. And we're making strides in high school with 14,000 students accessing Achieve 3000. We continue to increase efforts to ensure that all of our students are taking full advantage of this. And we increase usage weekly. Putting this all together, let's go back down the grades and think about how this looks for a second grader experiencing their ELA content. We toggle between asynchronous and synchronous time using engaging digital content with within each one of those structures. Our foundational skills time flows into interaction with Wit and Wisdom, and we've explicitly called out resources and structures that can and should exist in small group and individualized time. All of these resources and supports have been thoughtfully selected and provide students with equitable access to all content throughout the instructional block. Throughout this year, we're engaging stakeholders in a variety of different opportunities. We're also including sessions for parents and caregivers to support their children and encourage engagement in personalized instruction. We're partnering with FCE for Family University, which includes websites, resources, and a ton of resources for parents and families to support them as they support their students, K through 12. And then beyond professional learning, we're offering drop-in Q&A sessions, newsletters, support sites for educators and school leaders. We're also doing some really cool stuff in high school. We're reimagining our high school elective courses, and we started with African American Literature course. This is designed in collaboration with other offices and our own equity office, and the redesign is the first in a series with plans to reimagine our additional elective courses, add some new ones, and also reimagine some of our honors coursework. So some pretty exciting things are happening in ELA. Tada?
Thanks, Brooke. If you just go on to the next slide, I know we're tight on time here, so I will just cover what the key takeaways are by showing also some of the data vises that we did. So the next slide, Brooke, if you don't mind. So here again, with our iReady math diagnostic, which we administered in grades K through 11, what we found was that nearly a quarter of our students began the year at or above grade level in grades K through 5. This is an increase from last year. Again, due to the change in the testing environment, the reasons for improvement, as an example, there is unclear, and what we're doing is triangulating that diagnostic with additional data available to understand what students can do and are ready to learn next. And this is especially so in that grade band of 1 through 5 and 9 through 11, is that's where we saw the most differences in our performance compared to prior years at the beginning of the year. We do also see that, however, among our Black and Latinx students, they are still remaining less likely to be grade level ready than their white students, with the gaps increasing in the upper grades. If you go on to the next slide, when we take a look at our cohort data, so these are the students that assessed last year at the beginning of the year, as well as assessed at the beginning of this year. Of the students that were found to be on or above grade level across these grade bands, for large parts, we have a large percentage that remain on or above grade level, so they were able to keep at that grade level status at the beginning of this year, with some slight dips in those students that are now reporting 1 level below, but we believe with some targeted intervention, we could quickly accelerate and get them ready for middle of year. And then on the next slide, just shows again the look of the students that were performing 2+ grade levels below last year and how they are faring this year. The majority of those students remain 2+ grade levels below. In grades 2 to 5, that consists about 38% of the student body, and then that does increase as our grade bands increase, with 55% of the students in grades 6 to 8, 2+ below, and 66% in grades 9 through 11, 2+ below.
Hey, excuse me, Ms. Nolan, we have about 5 minutes to go.
Great. Beth?
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Beth Sappy. I'm the Director of Math, and I'm going to take you through some of the content we have with mathematics this year. So like ELA, our approach to mathematics is grounded in feedback for our teachers and school leaders, and alongside our content work groups and our district priorities and goals, as Chief Davis called out earlier. So this year we continue to leverage Eureka Math as our core math curriculum. You can see the assessment landscape has changed. We are not implementing the ANET assessments this school year, and the assessment tools that Eureka can provide enable us to assess our students' needs and develop individual learning plans clearly and concisely. You will also notice that we're able to purchase workbooks and manipulatives, as well as tools to support personalized learning that will support our students during the virtual and hybrid engagement in school. So what's new? So Eureka Math and Sync is one of the new resources that we have this year to support our teachers and our student learning. So Eureka Math and Sync provides flexible tools and resources beyond the basic curriculum for continued and enhanced instructional delivery, whether we're in school or virtual or hybrid. Eureka Math and Sync also offers instruction that guides teachers with the how-to combine synchronous and asynchronous instruction to optimize content knowledge build. Great Mind teachers serve as co-teachers, which is pretty cool in this situation, so that we can work with our teachers to deliver instruction and really focus in on the discourse and the formative assessments. Well, the in-sync video co-teacher, we call it, can really hone in on some of that content, and then students have those videos they can engage in while doing their asynchronous work. In-sync also offers a wide variety of resources to support teachers and students, as well as families daily, such as video lessons, parent tip sheets, and daily learning anywhere plans. The other thing that's new this year is Eureka Math Equip. So in addition to InSync, students and teachers have access to Eureka Math Equip and Affirm. Equip includes adaptive diagnostic assessments for each module in Eureka Math. It also includes supporting lessons and fluency activities based on the student's performance on the diagnostic assessment. Most importantly, it streamlines pacing and it ensures students stay on track with grade level work. And it also helps support teachers in designing their small group instruction. So it's giving students specific data to drive those sessions. And then we have Affirm, which includes topic quizzes, mid and intermodule assessments, and the ability for teachers to customize assessments to support their students and to get that data to make those informed decisions. This is just an example of what teachers see in Equip. So since this is new this year, and it's really helping support our small group instruction based off needs around the foundational skills, teachers are given, when they give the students this short adaptive test, they get two things immediately. So one around bridging those gaps of foundational knowledge that drives teachers right to those specific gaps so kids can engage in grade level work. And it also shows you item by item around the standard on where students are struggling around those foundation skills and gives lessons to support small group instruction so that students can access grade level content. The other new and exciting thing this year is the personalized learning. Over the years when we're working with teachers and stakeholders, they're always asking for this personalized learning. And this year we were able to leverage funds to support teachers in this. So across our personalized learning platforms, we've consistently seen gains in access and performance across. Now that teachers are more comfortable with the resources and tools for the core instruction, we're making the shift to best support them around implementation, small group instruction, and the progress monitoring aligned to the personalized learning tools. You can see we still have some work to do to make sure all students are engaging in this. For example, in iReady, we have approximately 57% of our students are logging on, while 42 to 43% of them are engaging with the personalized learning. And of those 43%, we have about 81% of the students passing between 70 and 100% of their lessons, which is what iReady says is the sweet spot for students to really grow so that we see progress on the next diagnostic assessment. The next thing is, how do all of these resources work together in order to support instruction? And what does it look like for a student? So when I think about a student individually, how does this all flow? So there's new engaged learning every single day. The teachers are engaging with students using InSync, and in K through 5, they're using Zern as that concept development and debrief. And then students also have the opportunity to do some things online asynchronously or with their workbooks around the foundational skills around Equip, and really engaging in the videos to make sure that they're understanding and previewing that new learning and also reviewing new learning so that they can successfully be ready for their next class. We've also leveraged a lot of the resources to support small group synchronous and asynchronous instruction so that students are getting that instruction they need to re-engage and content that maybe they have not mastered so that they can make sure they're accessing that grade level content. And then with that small group asynchronous, really leveraging our individual learning plans so that each student has their own pathway to learn and move forward, whether they are focusing in on foundational skills or advancing and enriching to further grade levels above where they are currently in classes.
And
then,
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're at time actually, and we still have to get through procurement, and we have a hard stop at 5:30. Commissioner McFadden, I direct to you. How do you want to proceed?
We're a few slides away from the end, and I'm just going to encourage. There are several questions and thoughts that I have. I know that there are other commissioners that do, and we may have to send them in. But Beth, if you can wrap up quickly the remaining 2 slides in the presentation so that we can move forward. Joe, with procurement, I do not believe that we have several questions for the board letters. So let's just wrap up these final 2 slides.
Yep, absolutely. So most of the ongoing implementation supports are mirrored for ELA and math. So a lot of what ELA is doing, math is doing the same. One thing I wanted to call out that Brooke mentioned during her piece was just around the teachers and really leveraging their expertise and using them as our tool to have our math talks so that they can share best practices and what's working and what's not working. And that has helped support us in our way that we're supporting teachers across the district. So hearing from our teachers, learning from our teachers, because they're the ones that are in the field day by day working with the kids. And then I'm going to just pass it off to Jalima to wrap up this last slide.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Jalima Elisea, Director of Specialized Learning. So last month we had an opportunity to share some of the work around MTSS with the board. And so we wanted just to take a moment this evening to show the connections to the content work. So with MTSS, the work that's been happening aligned to math and literacy instruction, we have support for schools with resource mapping to identify the tools and resources. Many of those resources were reviewed today, but it's not just the materials, it's also looking at human resources to see who can provide, who's available to provide intervention and additional support to our students. In addition to that, just professional development for teachers to show them, teachers and school leaders to really show them how to unpack the data and analyze those data reports so that students can get the most out of personalized learning and small group instruction. Also working with literacy and math to really tier the supports that were reviewed today. So a lot of those resources and interventions, tiering those for schools so that they know the right supports for students based on their individual needs, and how to progress monitor to ensure that students are successful with the interventions and supports that we have aligned to meet those individual needs. And then this is the last slide. So as we are preparing for the middle of the year, we're just thinking about how we're ensuring that how we're messaging to our families and our schools around accessing platforms and also engaging in middle of the year assessments, making sure that families understand the purpose of those assessments and that they are not supporting students, so we can get a very clear picture of student progress as well as student needs in order to move the work forward. So at this time, we will take any questions.
I appreciate the presentation and the work that everyone put into it. I'm hoping that with the middle of the year update, that we will have more of a focus in a presentation like this on the interventions and the targeted supports for our young people, for our students. I think it's important. I think the data that we saw is great to see. It's a picture of where we are. And I get that we're in COVID, but I particularly want to know what we are doing to accelerate students and to fill some of the learning loss that we've experienced as a result of COVID and just as a result of generational underservicing. So I just want to make sure that is clear. And I know that some of it was kind of embedded in the presentation, but it wasn't a primary focus. What do interventions look like? How is the district in our individual schools using data to develop corrective action plans for the young people? I think that's really important for us to hear. And specifically, not enough students are logging on to what we just saw, the Learn, the iReady, and the Imagine. And I get that we're in COVID. I know that we're doing our best to make sure that all of our young people have the ability to connect and have the devices that they need. But I really want to know what we're doing to ensure that engagement is boosted up so that our young people are getting the most out of this experience that they can get out of as we are in a pandemic and as we move forward. So this is a question that I have. I'm going to send some of them, the rest of them in, but there wasn't a lot of focus in this presentation specifically with students with disabilities. I would be interested to know how we're starting with them. I'm not sure if they were just all grouped in the grade bands all together, or are we disaggregating students with disabilities in their progress to date, in addition to our English language learners. I would be interested in that. With our students with disabilities, oftentimes, and this is just me putting, just being a teacher, oftentimes I'm interested in learning a little bit more about that. And then also, I'm thinking about how are we anticipating summer learning, especially with trends. There were a lot of students that did not necessarily meet passing grades in several of their courses quarter one, not just in city schools, but all over. I mean, in my school district, all over the place when I talk to colleagues. I'm interested in knowing what we're anticipating for summer learning, what we're anticipating for the fall. And I know that folks are focused on dealing with what we have in front of us right now and taking care of the crisis and the pandemic, and that is crucially important. But I'm also in a place where I think we should be forward thinking also and distributing some of our leadership to ensure that there is a plan in place to make sure that we, yes, are filling gaps and yes, doing what the research says, as far as acceleration is concerned. Everything else I'll send. Commissioner Sykes, I would love to hear from you and your thoughts before we transition.
Good evening, thank you. So honestly, as I'm listening to the presentation, taking notes, one of my big things is what you said was about students with special education, the 504s, and those students who need a little bit more support when it comes to their learning. I think my question would be around when it comes to Amplify and the assessments that we're using to measure the growth of our students. When we're not doing these assessments, are we making sure, are the teachers and the principals making sure that the teachers are consistently throughout lessons encouraging students to continue and to basically build off of what they already know and where they see that the data is? Basically to try to keep the growth going, and not only when it comes to tests, they see the test and okay, and say so and so you did good, but throughout the course of the lesson and whatever topic it may be, just continue to push them. I think that's just my big thing, to make sure that we are it is something that we're doing consistently and not just when we get it or we'll get the data for an assessment.
Commissioner Sykes, were you looking for a response to that?
Yes, I feel like that was basically my question. Is there something that we're doing that we're making sure that teachers are consistently encouraging students to based off of the data that they do have to when they are doing lessons, that this is good work, continue to do that, and making sure that the work that they are doing is matching up with the assessment data.
I can jump in quickly, Commissioner McFadden. It's Janice again. Yes, I think that's a great point you bring up. We are definitely working on communication and messaging for school leaders and for teachers to both ensure that the assessments are happening, but to Commissioner McFadden's earlier question, how are they using the data to make determinations about groupings for students, monitoring where students are, the engagement that students are having within and around both the day-to-day learning, but also that personalized learning format. It is also something that the school's office has been working on very closely. So ensuring that the academic content liaisons that work in both literacy and math are having those conversations with teachers and support staff that do the weekly planning, as well as our instructional leadership executive directors who work with our principals to have those conversations. And then I would say, lastly, working in partnership with OAA, or Achievement and Accountability, with the school's office, is we've been doing regular updates through Chief Davis's regular emails to staff, as well as principals, to make sure that everybody understands the expectation. But as you heard from both Brooke and Beth in this presentation, there's also options for teachers to get additional support. We know that communication is always something that can be improved, so we're trying to get it from all angles and making sure that we're getting feedback from stakeholders to continue to improve that.
Commissioner McFadden, if I could add on to Janice's thoughts as well. Commissioner Sykes, like Janice said, that is the question. It's not just data, but what are you doing with it? I mean, 3 weeks ago, we brought all the pre-K to 8 principals together along with 2 other members of their staff to look at that beginning of year data around early literacy and what is the best way to group students and how, as a leadership team, should you check that? So we're just not putting students in groups and giving them assignments that don't match their needs. So we have to be very strategic about this, and it requires us to train our teachers and to train our staffs as to the best practices on not just looking at the data, but then reacting to it the right way. And so we did that 3 weeks ago, and we have a follow-up meeting literally tomorrow where, you know, a principal and a teacher will be examples as to how they're doing that within their school. And again, what are the best practices around it so that every minute that a student is working in that small group, it's aligned to their need and not just a normal assignment.
I appreciate that, Chief Davis. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing more of that when we hear the middle of the year or end of the year, both of them. I think we'll hear both of them. But I'm glad that you bring up student needs. I'm curious to know, and this is just my thinking, I'm curious to know if there's any research around trauma-informed accelerated learning. And if that research is out there, are we using that to support what we're doing to help fill gaps, help close the gap, raise the bar, help to accelerate learning, help to remediate our young people? I'm curious, and of course, I'm going to do some of that work on my own, but I'm curious to see if there is research and work out there happening or being studied on trauma-informed accelerated learning. I think it's critical for where we are, given pre-COVID, our experiences as a city and as a school system, but also with COVID exacerbating the inequities. I'm curious to know if that is out there and if it's already embedded in something that we do. I would be interested in hearing that, not necessarily now, but as we move forward, hopefully that can drive some of the work that we're focusing on also. So I appreciate everyone's time for this. Commissioner Brooks, if you're still there, if you have something pressing, you most certainly can chime in. But Joe, we are ready for you to bring up procurement if you have something to present on the screen. Dr. Brooks, are you there?
Good afternoon, commissioners. Commissioner McFadden, due to time, do you want to go right into questions or shall I go through these?
We actually don't have any questions for them, but because we are recording, I think it's important for them to at least be read for the record.
Yep, I will do the abridged versions then. Yes, there are 5 board items tonight. The first is a 1-year contract extension through December of 2021. Along with a $70,000 increase to our contract with P&A Administrative Services. They provide medical and dependent care flexible spending accounts and COBRA programs for city schools employees and eligible dependents. The next item is an increase to our current National Vision Administrators contract by an additional $2,655,179 and to extend the contract through December of 2024. During this extension period, there is a guarantee no change in our rates. Next item is an increase to our current Care First of Maryland contract by an additional $4,851,000 and to extend the contract through December of 2021. And this will continue our dental plan services and programs to city schools, employees, and their eligible dependents. The next item is approval of a contract with the Fund for Educational Excellence to provide the Chicago Parent Program, or CHIP. It is a 12th session evidence-based parenting program developed in collaboration with low-income African American and Latino families to ensure its cultural and contextual relevance and impact. The total contract amount is $127,440. And the contract term is January 13th, 2021 through January 12th of 2022. The last item is a piggyback contract from the Harris County Choice Partners contract. It's with Panorama Education, Inc. Total amount of the contract is $54,000, and they're to provide access to their Panorama Family Services surveys platform. Contract term is December 9 of 2020 through December 8 of 2021. Any questions?
Joe.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Sykes, Commissioner Brooks, I'm not sure if he's still here, and Commissioner Roberts, are there any additional questions before we wrap up? I know that the full board has a special meeting at 5:30. Commissioner Roberts, you're there. Commissioner Sykes,
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome.
Commissioner McFadden, I do not have any questions.
Awesome. I appreciate everyone's time this evening in this meeting. And if there are no objections, we are going to adjourn at 5:31. Everyone, please stay safe and keep our children first, because that is why we do this work. Have a great evening, everyone.